Well, I get up about, at least 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. Well, that's a farmer.
Farmer hours.
And I get the paper, and they two go out, and Bill and I, we go downstairs to my suite, and I'll dig out the crossword puzzle. Well, I'm not too hep on crosswords, but I get a try at it, and then the next day I can see what happened.
Wow.
Food.
What do you remember the 1920s?
Well, not too much. I was born in 1923.
1923.
Yeah.
So you were, well, you're 7 years old.
My mother died when I was 3, and I lived with my grandmother. We used to play for dances. He played the piano and I played the violin.
The violin.
And
wow.
we used to play for dances.
Like a fiddle, you mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I had to quit that because one day, it was in the winter time, we were at Sunny Glen School where I went, and it was, oh God, it was cold. It was 40, 50 below. And so when I got into school, of course it was warm, and I took my violin out and I set it on the chair right close to me, and this one girl I knew, pretty hefty, she came along and sat on it and just smashed the violin all to rags. I would have killed her.
Sat on it.
Oh, sat on it, and she turned around. She didn't even see. She never looked. She just saw there was a chair there, and she turned around and sat.
Oh my.
Anyway.
So just to go back now, you lived on the farm? Now that's pretty far out in the countryside, I imagine, was it?
I was 14 miles from a town.
14 miles out into the prairies.
In the prairies.
So when you left there to come to Vancouver, that must have been a bit of a change. You came on the train?
No. It wasn't all that much of a change to the extent that during the war I was all over the place.
How did you end up coming to Vancouver?
Well, I got married, and my wife, we moved down to our old shack that Dad and I had, and he'd never worked the land very much or did much of anything. He couldn't. And though the first year I just worked my guts out, working the land and everything. And my neighbor came down and he said, "Don, if we got any moisture this year, you got her made." Well, I didn't get any moisture.
Really?
It came up like that and went psh. So by that time I'd used all my money, and so I said to Dorothy, "Where will we go, east or west?" She said, "Well, I've been in Vancouver." She worked for Woodward's for a while as a store on the groceries, and she said she was hard of hearing, but she said, "I may be able to get a job back there." And I said, "Well, we'll see."
So Woodward's is a big deal back in the 50s.
Yes,
Everybody loved Woodward's,
yes,
right?
My,
What do you remember about Woodward's when you first came out?
well, I didn't have much to do with it because Dorothy worked there. She did the groceries and whatnot.
Did she like working there?
Oh, yes.
So the Woodward's food floor was kind of famous down in the basement because it was the biggest in North America for a while. It was a big deal, right? Yeah.
She worked there for a while. Well, she worked there for 4 years before. 3 or 4 years before we were married.
And you're saying she enjoyed working there?
Well, she lived with her sister up in Vancouver Heights there, and she catch the bus and you go take her right down to the back of the store in those days.
Down Powell Street.
Yeah.
So when you arrived in Vancouver in 1947, what do you remember about the city? What impression did the city make on you?
It was in a hell of a shape.
How so?
Well, downtown, the poles were all falling over. I remember, I'll give you enough. I went up, we put a new secondary in, and I'm going to undo the houses. And so gee, there's one house there. So I cut the wires off, and a woman 3 doors down said, "Hey, you killed my electricity." And they had it going from one house to the other. Mm-hmm. And that didn't happen too often.
So did you go to the beaches or the mountains at all back then in the 40s? Did you?
No.
No, you were working all the time.
I wasn't. Well, you see, I in Saskatchewan, you didn't have much chance. Well, you could go to Jackfish Lake and the like of that, but I got my first car, my Model T, when I was 16, and I was there because Dad didn't have a car, and we had no way of getting around much. And
so you're 14 miles out. What, you're on horseback before that?
Pardon?
How did you get around? By train?
Team.
By team?
No, in 1930 they put a railroad right across the corner of our farm.
Oh, it was nice of them.
And then, and now it's all gone. But it was pretty good.
So when you worked for Human Rumble, you said for 30 years? Human
40
Rumble?
years.
40 years, Human Rumble. That was a really big electrical contracting company, right?
Yeah.
And Hume was actually mayor in New Westminster through almost all of the 1950s. And then I think in the 1960s, he built a great big house in the middle of the British properties.
Oh, I put the power in. I worked on the crew to put the power.
When they built the house?
Yeah.
What year was that, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I was working as a lineman then.
Yeah.
In
the 60s.
Yeah.
And that's the house that Jimmy Pattison bought quite a long time ago, Mayor Hume's house.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Pattison's been living there ever since. He's still living in that house.
Oh, yeah. Hume was in 15 East 2nd was Hume's office, shop. And that's where they had the trucks. And in there it was an old barn.
That's now the Olympic Village.
Yeah. I said, well, when Deb and Donna, my other daughter, took me around, take me through, and then, Christ, I couldn't find my way out. But we had I didn't go to that part of the town at all because it was too crowded.
But you must have done something to get out of the house on the weekends. Did you go to church or something, or what were you doing?
Yeah, we went to church. There was a church across the street.
You didn't get very far.
No, in where that Veterans Project was there across the street.
Yeah.
And those guys, of course, the guys that were, as we called them, zombies.
Really?
They were all in Canada, and they got the same money I did, but they spent it on booze, and
They had been in the military.
well, yeah, they've been in home defense, as they called it, and right from Grandview Highway right up to 22nd That's where they built all the houses for
Wartime or post-war housing for,
yeah,
for the
and
veterans.
then there was one in the West End too. But none of those are the guys that came out of the big, what was it, the big hotel that was downtown.
Hotel Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was where they kicked them all out of there and got them in there.
And they were in Homeland Security or
Well,
Homeland Defense.
well, they weren't. There was nothing to defend. But they didn't want to go overseas.
And when they moved them out, they tore down that big old Hotel Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
Right at Georgia and Granville.
Yeah.
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 My dad said that was the most beautiful building in Vancouver. Did you ever go in it?
I never was in it. No.
Did you ever go to the PNE in the old days?
Oh yes.
So what was that like? What do you remember
Well,
about? So you kind of like the whole farming aspect of it, because in the 50s they always had a lot of farm stuff there, didn't
Oh
they?
yeah, and they always had lots of good animals and stuff, and
Prize animals
Yeah.
and prize vegetables
Yeah.
and prize,
horses and
Horses.
cattle,
right.
and of course I was used to horses.
And then they'd have the few shows, I guess, the horse show and the.
Well, we didn't. We never stayed too much. So I stayed out of downtown Vancouver as much as I could because it. Well, no, that's not right either. Because we'd go to Dorothy and I'd go to the bay, and
Go shopping at the Bay.
yeah, and Eaton's and anything you wanted something big, or a dress or yeah.
Downtown shopping at the three big department stores.
Yeah, I remember Woodbridge, and then there was just next to it was, what the hell was that?
Army and Navy?
No, another.
Well, Spencer's or Eaton's.
Spencer's.
Oh, you went to Spencer's. Okay.
Yeah.
It became Eaton's.
Yeah. And but I was so goddamn tired most of the time, especially doing line work because
Up and down the poles.
yeah,
That'll keep you in shape.
yeah. Well, I guess something did.